Agitatorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Qui fecicelum et terram.
Okay, so we saw St. Athanasius triumphed with all the great Catholic saints in the year 325 at the Council of, and the Church condemned the Arian heresy. But did the Arian heresy fall, drop dead, and was never heard of again? No. Arius dropped dead, but the bishops he influenced continued to spread their heresies. Name one of them.
Bishop Eusebius of Nicomedia.
Yeah, he was really bad. He was related to the emperor. He had found favor. He was part of the royal family. He was very political, manipulative. He falsely accused St. Athanasius numerous times of grave sins, even of murder. So St. Athanasius, we've already seen he's been exiled. He's already been exiled once to Germany, which in those days was way up in the Black Forest. And now he is back to Alexandria. So let's pick up where we left off here. The third visit with Constantius, the emperor. So what are the three emperors again after the death of Constantine?
They are Constantius, and
Constantinus? Or no?
Yeah, to be more confusing. Constantinus, Constantius, and Constantius. Yeah, it's quite confusing. The three sons. All right. The strongest of the big three was Constantius of that day. Not only assured him of his friendship and confidence, and his desire to have him return in honor to his see at Alexandria, but promised never again to listen to any accusations against St. Athanasius. This he did not simply say, wrote St. Athanasius, but sealed his words with oaths, calling upon God to be witness of them. So Constantius, who favored the Arian heresy, promises St. Athanasius, I'm not going to allow them to persecute you anymore. The exile at once, with great joy, St. Athanasius set out back for Alexandria, northern Egypt. 100 miles from the city, he was met by some of his people who had heard the good news and had come to welcome him and escort him home. It was a delirious reception he received on all sides when he entered the city of Alexandria, October 2nd, the year 346. So he comes back from exile in 346, the first exile. He'll be exiled 5 times. This is just the beginning. Thus began with acclamations what has been called the golden decade of Athanasius and of the Church of Egypt. His return, his preaching, and the recollection of all he had suffered for truth's sake produced an extraordinary wave of religious enthusiasm in his diocese. Lax Catholics became fervent. There were many conversions. The poor were fed and clothed. Virgins dedicated themselves to God. Illicit marriages were renounced. Everywhere the people seemed to vie with one another in prayer, fasting, and acts of fraternal charity. St. Athanasius wrote, "You would have thought that every family and every house had become a church." It was like the return of apostolic times. Arianism seemed a thing of the past to a man welcomed by all the bishops of Egypt and Libya, and by all but 3 of those of Palestine. He was St. Athanasius, he was the acknowledged father of all of Egypt, including the now populous monastic communities of the Thebaid. So the Thebaid is down south of Alexandria, several hundred miles along the Nile River, where all the St. Athanasius visited and grew up with St. Anthony of the Desert, remember? And what other holy desert monks were down there? Saint Paphnutius,
Yes.
Saint Pachomius, who would cross the Nile River on the backs of the crocodiles, who treated him with great respect because he was a saint. Even the favor of Constantius seemed to be a fixed and permanent blessing. And when Constans, the other son of Constantine, was murdered in 350 by soldiers of the Gallic usurper Magnentius, St. Athanasius had prayers offered throughout his diocese for his former persecutor, Constantius, and for his success over the one man who stood between him and the sole rulership of the world. We come now to chapter 5, St. Athanasius against the world. The Emperor Constantius did not show his hand until after the defeat and suicide of Magnentius in the year 353, when there was no longer any danger that the Egyptians might side with his rival. The Eusebians then found in the Lord of the world an unchanged Arian, more than ready to take up their cause against the little bishop of Alexandria, who had defied both them and him. So they're talking here about St. Athanasius. The two Eusebian bishops, their name was Eusebius, they were both given to Arian heresy. Constantius, who told St. Athanasius, don't worry, I'm going to back you, I won't persecute you again. He is prevailed over by these two wicked bishops, the Bishop Eusebius of Nicomedia and the other Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea. So they're wicked bishops, evil, and they're plotting against St. Athanasius. They want his head, they want him dead. He's the only obstacle to spreading the Arian heresy. St. Athanasius and his Athanasian Creed were denounced by the councils of Arian bishops at Arles in 353. Arles, A-R-L-E-S, Arles. And at Milan, northern Italy, up here is Milan, in 355. So the Arian bishops are gathering together and they're condemning St. Athanasius' creed and all that he stood for. Just like the modernists gathered together and condemn Archbishop Lefebvre and excommunicate him, and the French bishops couldn't stand him, so forth. The Arian bishops attended by the emperor in person at these councils. So Constantius backed the Arian heretics, who compelled the bishops to sign under threat of exile. Many Catholic prelates, including the Venerable Osius of Cordova, were cast into prison or driven from their dioceses. So remember Osius of Cordova. So he was old now. He was at the Council of Nicaea, remember? He's an old man now and he's exiled. So here begins a fresh persecution again of the Catholic people and bishops and priests. Finally, in the summer of 355 AD, Emperor Constantius sent his secretary Diogenes to Alexandria to arrest, guess who?
St. Athanasius.
Yeah, so much for Constantius being behind St. Athanasius. So he sends Diogenes with troops to arrest St. Athanasius in Alexandria, northern Egypt. This was not so easy as he had expected, for the people rallied to the defense of their bishop. And although the imperial emissary, Diogenes, stormed a church on September 4th, 355, he did not dare to carry out his instructions. Like Annas and Caiaphas, he feared the popular wrath. So the good Catholic people of the Diocese of Alexandria rallied to defend St. Athanasius. Caesar was powerful, however. Duke Syrianus arrived on January the 6th with the detachments from the legions of Egypt and Libya and placed the city under martial law. St. Athanasius asked him if he came with any orders from the court of the Emperor Constantius. The Duke Syrianus said that he had not, and when the magistrates and people indicated that they intended to protect their bishop, he swore by the life of Caesar that he would do nothing without instructions from Constantius. This restored confidence, and nothing further happened for about a month. On the evening of Thursday, February 8th, St. Athanasius was presiding at a ceremony in the crowded church of Theonas in preparation for the next morning's Mass and Holy Communion, when suddenly he heard shouts and the clatter of weapons. 5,000 troops, in fact, had been flung about the building. Some broke in the doors. Just after midnight, the Duke Syrianus appeared with his notary, Hilary. St. Athanasius calmly seated himself on the throne in the recess of the apse. He had been expecting this. It was not by accident that he ordered the deacons to begin the 135th Psalm, which says, Laudate Dominum quoniam bonus. Praise the Lord, for he is good, they chanted. Praise ye the God of gods, who smote great kings and slew strong kings. After each verse of the psalm, the people roared the refrain, for his mercy endureth forever. By this time, troops had invaded and surrounded the sanctuary of the church. The Arian heretics were egging them on and pointing out St. Athanasius. The congregation cried out that they would not leave without their bishop and his deacons. St. Athanasius told them that he would not depart until after they did. Let them say a prayer and then go home. This they proceeded to do, and nearly all had gone when some monks and priests surrounded the bishop before the scattered soldiers could recover from their surprise and dragged them away. During the wild confusion that followed, he apparently fainted and was carried out unconscious. Meanwhile, amid shouts and screams and the flashing of swords, some dastardly things were done. Virgins were stripped by legionaries and Arian heretics, and several were slain, while men who tried to protect them were shot down with arrows. St. Athanasius was taken to some secret place, whence he was spirited away during the early morning hours to a hiding place which has never been divulged. It may have been a deserted cistern somewhere in the not-too-distant Nitrian desert. It may have been a tomb. 2 weeks later, one George of Cappadocia, a pork dealer, who had made himself rich by fraud, and whose chief qualifications seem to have been his violent temper and his Arianism, entered Alexandria as bishop and sat upon the chair of St. Athanasius in the church of Theonas. So here's a Tuke-line bishop taking the throne. He's a fake bishop, trying to overthrow the see of St. Athanasius. The bishop in his place of concealment was kept informed of all this and more, which he carefully set down. He writes, St. Athanasius, after Easter week, virgins were thrown into prison, bishops were led away in chains by soldiers, houses of orphans and widows were plundered, and their loaves of bread were taken away. Attacks were made upon houses, and Christians thrust forth in the night, and their dwellings sealed up. Brothers of clergymen were in danger of their lives on account of their brethren. On the Sunday after Pentecost, this crazy George, the pork dealer, pretending to be bishop, sent a maniac named Sebastian with an armed mob to harass the Catholics as they prayed in their cemetery. Lighting a fire, this ruffian threatened to throw virgins into the fire unless they accepted Arianism. When they refused, he had them stripped and beaten across their faces until they were almost unrecognizable. 40 Catholic laymen were scourged so cruelly with thorns that some of them died. The bodies of the dead were denied their relatives and buried secretly. 30 bishops of Egypt and Libya were banished, some perishing of exposure or torture on the roads. So what's exposure, anybody?
Oh, does it mean like heat stroke?
Yeah, heat or cold. Yeah, exposure to the heat or cold. Yeah. For 6 years they hunted for St. Athanasius in the cities, the deserts, and the mountains. So he's being hunted, and they just can't find him. He seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth, and with him his cause. Arianism had replaced Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire until St. Jerome could lament that the whole world was groaning to find itself Arian. All right, so Arian is long dead now, but the heresy didn't die with him. Right? And as we're going to see later, after this Arianist wave is condemned finally, there's going to be another wave of semi-Arianism. That's where you get the dispute over homoousion and homoousion, the difference of one letter sharpens. So not a dull moment for St. Athanasius, is it? And neither was it for Archbishop Lefebvre. There was some attempts on his life, and Bishop Four now, told us years ago that when Archbishop Lefebvre was in Mexico, there were protests when he arrived off the plane because the local bishops condemned him. And at a banquet in the room behind where Archbishop Lefebvre was sitting, there was a bomb. And someone found the bomb and made it inactive before it blew. And then remember, Cardinal Ratzinger, Modernist Rome, called Archbishop Lefebvre the night before the consecrations. We'll send you a limousine. Why don't you come down for more discussions? Don't go forward with this consecrations. And Archbishop Lefebvre said, I leave you the judgment of the prudence of such a offer. So I bet you if he did take that offer, the black limousine to Rome, there would have been a freak accident in the tunnels, probably, of Switzerland. Probably. Then they could be rid of him once and for all. So the same hatred for St. Athanasius here. So St. Jerome, his famous saying was what?
That the whole world groaned to find itself Arian?
Yes, the whole world was gripped in this heresy. And St. Athanasius was really the only outspoken bishop defending Catholic doctrine. But he wasn't alone. There were others. There was a St. Eusebius, another good St. Eusebius, who was consecrating other bishops at the time without papal mandate. And there were other like St. Jerome, St. Augustine would have been alive at this time as well. So there were some other good saints. Even the old Bishop Osius of Cordova, weak from age, privation, and torture, was forced, though only for the time being, to deny the faith. Oh, so that's probably why he was never canonized. Bishop Osius of Cordova. A champion of the faith, but then under pressure he caved in, being tortured. Worse still, the Emperor Constantius and his eunuchs and Eusebian bishops now spread the boast that the Bishop of Rome himself, Pope Liberius, he's not a saint, Pope Liberius, had abjured the Nicene Creed and gone over to the Arian side. So the emperor was boasting, we got Rome now in our pocket. Very similar to now, the Judeo-Masons, Synagogue of Satan, the One World Order. We've got Rome in our pocket. This, at a stroke, seemed to them to destroy the work of the Council of Nicaea and the primacy of Peter. Whether Pope Liberius actually did this after 2 years in prison and under the coercion of floggings and the threat of death is still debated among Catholic historians. So the debate, he's saying, is did he really deny the faith and sign the Semi-Arian Creed? Or did he do it consciously or unconsciously because he was beaten and threatened? Well, he's not canonized, so that says a lot.
I believe the Pope after him condemned him for that. Right, Father?
Probably.
Some Pope after.
Was definitely, yes. Yes. He was condemned for signing the Semi-Arian Creed. But we could read in Latin, I don't have it right here, it's up in my room, the actual Latin condemnation of St. Athanasius by Pope Liberius. And in so many words it says, we united with all the Catholic bishops throughout the world who were actually Arian, we condemn Athanasius. He is no longer part of the union of the Catholic Church. We expel him, condemn him, excommunicate him. It's very clear. There's no debate over that document. So Pope Liberius did sign the Semi-Arian Creed. That's recorded. The debate, I guess, that William Thomas Walsh is saying is whether he did it with full conscience or was he, out of his mind from lack of sleep. That alone God can judge, but he did sign it. That was a fact. And so you can see, like the modernists, they're a bunch of little rats just going everywhere, invading everywhere, like a swarm of contamination. And now it's much worse because modernism is a synthesis of all the heresies. Whether Pope Liberius actually did this, certainly after his restoration to his see, Pope Liberius later vigorously denounced the Arians and said nothing to support the story of his defection. In any case, the doctrine of papal infallibility was not involved, since only a free act of the Pope could have validity. But the Arians rightly gauged the discouraging and bewildering effect of such propaganda among Catholics and made the most of it. Even St. Athanasius believed it, at least for a time. He writes, like madmen, having fixed themselves in the bond of impiety, they are drawing down upon their heads a more severe judgment. Thus, from the first, they spared not even Pope Liberius, Bishop of Rome, but extended their fury even to those parts. They respected not his bishopric because it was an apostolic throne. They felt no reverence for Rome because she is the metropolis of Romania. They remembered not that formally in their letters they had spoken of her bishops as apostolical men. When they perceived that he was an orthodox man and hated the Arian heresy and earnestly endeavored to persuade all persons to renounce and withdraw from it, these impious men reasoned thus with themselves, if we can persuade Pope Liberius, we can persuade all. So yes, if you can get the Pope to support Masonic ideas like today, you can make the whole church shake. First, they attempted to bribe the Pope with gifts and flattery. Constantius the emperor even had a present left for him at the tomb of St. Peter. Pope Liberius angrily had it cast out and boldly defied the emperor with words that all Christians admired. Quote, but Liberius, after he had been in banishment 2 years, gave way, wrote St. Athanasius sadly, and from fear of death subscribed So he did sign the Semi-Aryan Creed. Yet even this only shows, this is St. Athanasius writing, yet even this only shows their violent conduct and the hatred of Pope Liberius against the heresy, and his support of Athanasius, as long as he was suffered to exercise a free choice. For that which men are forced by torture to do contrary to their first judgment ought not to be considered the willing deed of those who are in fear, but rather of their tormentors. So writes St. Athanasius in his work called History of the Arians. So he's saying the Pope did sign, but he was pressured. There was one stout heart that never for a moment quailed in that furious persecution. Now indeed it was St. Athanasius contra mundum, against the world. St. Athanasius against the world. He behaved more like the general of a guerrilla army, confident of ultimate success, than a hunted fugitive with a price on his head. He kept in touch with his flock by letter, and occasionally by a secret visit under the very noses of George and the Duke. St. Athanasius wrote a memorable letter to the bishops of Egypt denouncing the Arian tenets and bidding them stand firm in Christ. So here he is being hunted down, he's in hiding, but he's still writing letters. He's still giving orders to defend the faith. He became the leader of a veritable army of monks who concealed him so successfully for 6 years that though he was sought out by troops in every hamlet, town, desert, and monastery, and in the very tombs of the dead, he was never betrayed or captured. Nor was St. Athanasius content with a more defensive warfare. Characteristically, his energetic mind turned this worst of all his trials, as it had the former ones, to good advantage. He gave the new monastic system the episcopal reorganization and supervision it needed. So as a bishop, he helped the monks put order and structure in their monasteries, that there should be a rule of life, and so forth. From a literary point of view also, this was the most fruitful period in his life. More than half his works were composed in those homeless years when the fidelity of Egypt, built up during his golden decade, served him in such good stead. The faithful messengers who brought him news of Alexandria and the empire carried back his writings far and wide to the host of Christians who waited for his every word. They rejoiced in his book, History of the Arians, his other work, Discourses Against the Arians, the gorgeous prose poetry of his sublime work called The Incarnation, and in its final form, the most readable and beautiful of all his works, the tender and unforgettable Life of St. Anthony. So in exile, he kept writing, he kept communicating, he kept teaching the faith as much as he could, and the faithful out in the world, the Catholics scattered throughout the world, waited to hear from him and waited to hear his encouraging words to remain faithful to Catholic tradition and don't deny Christ. So St. Athanasius, pray for us. Agitatorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Benedicere Domine.